Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, everybody. This is M. John Allen. Welcome you to the Ambassador for World Peace program. Tonight we have the exciting second part of our interview with the conductor on the Freedom Train. And the third part of this interview will be on Wednesday. Same time, same station, so watch for it then. The following is an Ambassador Foundation production. Welcome to the Ambassador for World Peace program with M. John Allen. Each week we bring you the solutions to this world's problems and the good news of the world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, here is M. John Allen. And then only that way could they open up an offshore bank account in many cases. And sometimes that's not even working anymore. They see the U.S. passport of the signatory and they still run away.
Of course, because they're dealing with an escaped slave.
Mm-hmm.
They may be escaped. They may be out there walking around right today, but they still hold the status of slave and the master can come for them.
Right, and they don't want to fool around with it.
That's right.
Now, something before we forget it that I wanted to bring out, another sign of this corporate status, of the fact that you're a corporate person, is that your name on all the documents is put in all capital letters, correct?
The all capital letter name is defined in Black's Law Dictionary, which is pretty scary.
Okay.
You really want to get right down to it, because it says that you literally are the lowest status that there is. When your name is spelled in all capital letters, you have no rights at all. It says so.
Okay. So that's another sign that you are a corporate person and not the freeborn sovereign that you were meant to be.
Well, it's kind of like a secret handshake. They don't tell you what that all... As a matter of fact, they get so ridiculous that when they're challenged, and this has happened more than once, they're challenged about, why is my name always spelled in all capitals? And they'll tell you, well, that's the way the computer's programmed. And they actually have said it's because the shift key is broken on the typewriter.
But, of course, that's not true either, because when you see the name United States of America, most of the time it's in all capital letters too. Or
of course, it's a corporation.
Or City of New York, or State of Ohio, or all this stuff is in all caps.
It is the code for cooperation.
Okay, so now I know other people have made that discovery, but I mean that is like a red flag out there telling you that you're in some kind of a topsy-turvy alternate corporate world, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I didn't want to...
And then you're there by choice. You volunteered for this.
Mm-hmm. Because you're part of their little system.
Now let me read you. I don't know if we're running out of time yet or not, but this is very important on this all capital letter name.
We can go as...
Because this is taken straight out of Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, page 264. Should anyone care to go back and check it.
Okay.
And I am reading. This is the legal caption of a corporation, legal entity, or an individual who is capitis diminuto maxima, and who has lost all rights of citizenship, status, freedom, and family right, styled as all capital letter name. Now, that comes right out of Black's Law Dictionary.
Wow. Now, of course, that's the older edition, right?
That is the older edition. That's correct.
What year was that put out?
I don't know. Some I think in the mid-40s, Black's Fourth.
Oh, okay. I thought it was further back than that. I thought it was in the 1800s.
No, they are changing Black's Law Dictionary as the editions progress. I think we're up to the 8th edition now, and when you compare the 8th to the 4th or the 7th to the 4th, you find that they have morphed a lot of the definitions so that they don't really say clearly what they should. But the law says the older edition prevails.
Right. It does. The law
Yes.
says the older edition prevails?
Yes.
Oh, now that's interesting, because that's the true one, and the other ones are just, all of this reminds me of the novel 1984, where they just morph everything and change everything and hope nobody notices, and thereby cover their tracks.
Well, if the people that are there currently at the time of the morphing don't see it, it's camouflaged well enough, within 2 generations, it's going to be as if it were always that way.
Mm-hmm. And in fact,
people forget.
We had discussed I don't want to really get into this, but we had discussed a website that you discovered, which is a fantastic treasure trove for research. You can give the URL if you want. That has lots of old books, old texts, old treatises. In fact, I found on there the Anti-Federalist Papers, which is very difficult to find. And that website's been attacked and taken down and then had to come back up. It really seems like somebody wants us to forget about all this older material.
It's interesting because the website was taken down. The server just refused to carry it anymore, I guess. I don't know much about that part of the world. I'm not really into that, but it went down within less than 2 months of the time that it was put up. And these are not reprints. These are scans of the original books.
I see.
Hundreds of thousands of pages that were scanned and put up for people to read.
And it's valuable material.
Obviously, most of these books, if you wanted to look through the libraries of the country and dig into their archives, you're going to find these books. They're a matter of public record, but who's going to find them?
Mm-hmm.
So this was a service that was just valuable like gold, and it was taken down almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want people to have access to this information.
Because it uncovers their tracks.
That's correct.
And just like Black's Law Dictionary's older editions uncover the tracks of this scam. And what we're really dealing with here is a scam of such monumental... I think one of the reasons that people, the general public, have such a hard time comprehending this or accepting it is because this is a scam of such monumental proportions. It's a fraud of such monumental proportions and a crime of such monumental proportions that it's almost incomprehensible to the ordinary mind, isn't it?
Well, the argument that I have gotten more than once is, come on, get real. You know how stupid government bureaucrats are, and you're going to tell me that they hatched up a plan this complex?
Mm-hmm. So what is your answer to that?
Well, the flaw in that thinking is your average, everyday government bureaucrat, and that includes the one that's perched in the White House, are stupid, I agree. But they're not the ones that hatched the plan.
Well,
and implemented the plan in their opportunistic fashion over decades and decades and decades. Mm-hmm. The minds that hatched this aren't visible in government.
Right.
What do you want to call it? You want to call it the One World Order? You want to call it the elite? You want to call it the Illuminati? There are a lot of terms that people use. They bandy them about pretty freely. And I try to stay away from these terms as a rule, but I suppose you've got to have some kind of a moniker for this group. Bilderbergers, that probably comes closer. Council on Foreign Relations, the people, the little man behind the curtain, which is I love that cute little phrase. I just love that. The little man behind the curtain, ha, ha, ha. Because we need somehow to make this force a little smaller in our minds, or otherwise we're going to live in fear.
Right.
And the fear will paralyze us.
Well,
And we will find all kinds of logical excuses why we can't confront this little man behind the curtain, because way down deep, we're scared to death.
Mm-hmm. Well, supposedly the Wizard of Oz was some kind of code trying to inform people of what was going on. Is that not right?
I don't know whether it's right or wrong. To be honest with you, I've read it, and I find it amusing, and I don't really put it down. I don't agree or disagree. I haven't had that much time to read The Wizard of Oz, if you really want to know.
Well, I'm talking about the movie, of course, you know, and that's that
never saw the movie.
Behind the curtain comes out.
I lived in an environment where, when I was born, where I was born and when I grew up, I had no electric lights, indoor bathroom, or running water.
Oh.
So I wasn't watching movies. My mother didn't believe movies were good for people. She thought they were sinful. So I think the first movie I ever saw, I was almost 19.
Oh, so you never actually saw The Wizard of Oz then, huh?
I have never watched The Wizard of Oz.
Oh,
and I'm not a television watcher today because I have just too much other things that I have to do. And I don't spend much time on what most people call entertainment, and that I hope that doesn't make me a real drudge, but maybe it does.
Well, maybe that's why you're the person to discover this, because you weren't brainwashed by all the mass media and television and all the other garbage we have on, because there's almost nothing decent to watch on television these days, and the news is propaganda, and, you know, it's just garbage. Now, let's get on with some more questions here. We're going to end up cutting this into 2 parts, I think, but that's no problem. So some of you may be joining us on what actually has become part 2 now. But we're continuing where we left off last time, if that's the case, because we're just over an hour now, and I probably will cut the first one at about an hour. So somewhere this tape is going to be cut, and I'm not sure which side of the cut we're going to be on. But anyway, continuing on with some of the things we had agreed to talk on before. Now, you actually have created a process, and this actually has been implemented with some people. So how many people have actually done this, do you think?
The completed process, so that we see the results, probably 15.
Okay. And of these people, I mean, is it working?
Yes, it's working.
Okay. In fact, I think you had one spectacular case that involved, you know, a tax situation. I don't know if you want to get into that without mentioning any names, but if you want to get into some of these personal stories, I think now would be a good time to do it.
As far as the Internal Revenue Service situation, it's I will cite it, but you have to remember, as I said to you earlier, the Internal Revenue Service works very slowly.
Right.
And sometimes many people over the years have claimed a victory, which long-term didn't turn out to be a victory. All they did was regroup and come back from another angle.
Okay.
And people were going around waving their arms saying, I beat the IRS, I beat the IRS, and it might have lasted for 2 years. But eventually the IRS was back on a new tack, even more dangerous than they were before. And eventually they win. So I hate to cite this as an example, however, this is pretty extreme. This particular client finished the process, completed the process, and noticed all of the principals of the Internal Revenue Service that had been sending him paperwork and documents and threats and so forth, and he was very, very close, probably literally within days of being indicted criminally. They had all of the building blocks in place for this, and I've worked with this for years, so I know pretty much what they're doing. I can see the progression of how they work. I've seen it before. And he, sort of in the nick of time, not even believing in what I was offering him, he went out and he followed the procedure that I gave him, and he noticed all of these people with his new status, his new standing. And he challenged them to rebut with documentation. And every movement immediately stopped. There has been no forward motion whatsoever, and they were on a roll.
Right. Now,
my experience says that they were going to indictment, and they were going to get there really soon, and everything has stopped.
And this is now, about 10 months later after after the freezing of the process, correct?
That's correct.
Now, of course, the IRS didn't necessarily just give up. They sent one of their minions to his door, if I remember correctly.
Yes, they sent a very cute little girl alone with no companion, which isn't done. It simply isn't done. Very attractive young lady went to his house and rang his bell and tapped upon his front window and caroled to him, "Oh dear, Mr. So-and-so, are you there? I'm from the IRS. Are you there?" And he, according to my instructions, did not answer, because once you have attained the correct status, you have no business talking to these people.
Well,
they don't concern you. They have no jurisdiction over you. You have no reason to be carrying on conversations with these people.
So, in other words, you just ignore them and don't answer the door, etc., right?
Well, let me put it this way. If Toys R Us had a representative that came to your door and you had absolutely no contracts with Toys R Us, you didn't work for them, you hadn't bought anything from them, you had no contact with them, they had no jurisdiction over you, no claim on you, you hadn't signed anything, would you talk to them? Why?
I suppose not. But it's actually
no business talking to them unless you want to initiate some kind of a contract with them. Why would you talk to them?
Right.
They are trying to contact the all-capital letter name entity. Why would you respond to that name? You have just stated you are not that entity.
Mm-hmm. So what have you instructed people to say? Like, for example, if they're in a situation where they're being bothered, let's say at a restaurant or, on the street or somewhere else, and, one of these agents comes up to you and calls your name, what are you supposed to do? Just say nothing?
Ignore them.
Okay.
If they persist, go get the manager and tell him to call the police.
Oh, okay. So, but I think you had mentioned that it actually is a bad idea to answer to your name, that would sort of transgress you back into their jurisdiction.
Are they coming looking for the entity that is identified in all capital letters? Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm. So,
it sounds the same verbally as your name. If your name is John Smith, capital J, small O-H-N, capital S, etc., and they are looking for all capital letter John Smith, and they come in and they have documentation on them somewhere. They may not be waving it at you, but they have it somewhere on their person, and you are identified in that paperwork as all capital letter John Smith, and they come in and say, "Oh, Mr. John Smith," and you say, "Yes, what have you just done?"
Well, I guess you've said that you were that person.
Correct. You have agreed. You have come into agreement with them. That's a legal term.
Okay. So in other words, that would put you back under their jurisdiction if you did that.
You have immediately, voluntarily stepped back into their jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. And, some of these are really fine
points. And this is not a game of hopscotch here. You can't jump in and jump back out and jump in and jump back out. This is not going to fly. You make up your mind who you are, and you get on that side and you stay there.
Okay. Because there's a great danger of allowing them to pull you back into their little matrix or whatever you want to call it, because then they can throw the book at you.
Well, I'm quite sure that this attractive young lady who was caroling at the client's door was a trap because the client happens to be a bachelor and unmarried and of marriageable age, always having been a bachelor, and probably a very desirable one because he is quite well off. And there was a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for both the agents, and because they get bonuses for these successes, and for the agency. So they tried tricking as a means to try to lure him back into jurisdiction, which he refused. They sent him certified mail, which he refused to sign for. The old rule was always never ignore anything from the Internal Revenue Service. If they send you certified mail, sign for it, because you need to know what step they're taking with regard to you. And if you don't sign for the certified mail, you'll never know. That was always the old rule. Don't ignore them. Foolish people used to just ignore them and pretend they didn't live there anymore and all this. And that was very foolish, because all of a sudden they found themselves ensnared in a trap that was just beyond belief, and they didn't know how they got there. Well, they didn't know how they got there because they didn't keep track of where the IRS was going, because they were trying to hide, and that didn't work. So the rule of thumb was always answer, always respond, sign for it, take it, read it. And now that you are no longer in that jurisdiction, and you don't want to opt back into that jurisdiction, you don't sign for certified mail that's addressed to an all-capital letter entity. If you do, you have just agreed that you are that entity.
Right. So that certainly is something you don't want to do. In other words, folks, listening to this program, you're going to have to change. If you decide to go forward with this, you're going to have to change your whole way of thinking, because all your life, you know, especially when you were a little child in school, when somebody called your name, hey, Johnny, you say, here, yeah, that's me. Well, you won't be able to do that anymore. Because you don't know who may be calling out your name. You may have never saw this person before, but you don't want to have anything to do with them either. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
Pretty much, yes. I know that sounds like a real imposition. And it is burdensome, particularly at first, because we are all conditioned to react in a certain way. And changing your condition as an adult is really tough, but it has to be done. If you want to be free, it's not free to get free. Right. You have to put some work into it.
Right. You have to put some work into it and change some of your habits. So this isn't for everybody, because a lot of people would be either too lazy or too stupid to make this work.
Not too stupid. I don't like that word. Stupid is a very bad word.
Okay.
I like afraid.
Okay.
Because all of us have one of the biggest blockages, the biggest barriers to our success in life is fear. It is a four-letter word. Ha-ha. But it's fear. It's basically a fear of death. And the fear of death translates into many other fears. And if we analyze it, the fear paralyzes us so that we can't learn, we can't understand, we can't comprehend. We huddle psychologically in a little corner somewhere and just fearfully pray that we don't get hammered. You have to overcome the fear and say, I'm going to be what I'm going to be, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to become that.
So you have to have a lot of internal fortitude and determination.
Correct.
Okay. Before we get off this particular subject, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but one of the people who has done this that you've been working with for a while is actually a police officer, right?
Yes, he is. He's a police officer for the municipality of one of the major cities in the country, and at least a major city in the state. He decided that he wanted to become a national sovereign, and he went through the whole process, and he is really enjoying his new status. Really, truly enjoying his new status. He's taking it step by step. The first step was approximately a month after he had filed all of his paperwork and everything was in place. He had the a friend who has access to the main databases for the police department, put in the license plate number of his vehicle, and it came back. They have what they call a wants and warrants search, and it is in the national and probably international. I suspect that this also, since we already know that everything that's in the database nationally has been shared with Scotland Yard and Interpol and so forth, I suspect that this is international. It came up on the wants and warrants when someone is a murderer, or they're an escapee from a prison or whatever, and there's any connection between the number plate or their social security number or their name, and you put that into the computer, it comes up as a flashing orange line across the top of the screen, and it tells you that you're at risk. In other words, as a police officer, if you pull somebody over and they are a violent criminal, you're at risk.
Right.
And this is the purpose of all this. This is the wants and warrants. It shows up all the warrants they may have out on them and so forth. So his name, his license plate number was plugged in, so he comes up, his name comes up on the flashing orange wants and warrants line, and it says National Sovereign Law Enforcement. And it blew him away. He was just absolutely delighted. He's a fairly young guy. He's about 36 years old, and he was really tickled by this. And he has found since that he is recognized in the department, in the police department generally by the higher-ups, as a sovereign. And actually his captain has been pulled aside and said, do not fool with him. He is a sovereign, and he can sue you and make your life hell, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Are you tired of high bank charges? Are you tired of being spied on by your bank and government? Are you tired of waiting days or even weeks for transactions to clear? Are you tired of the Federal Reserve manipulating the value of your money and coming out always on the losing end? Listen, if you always do the same thing, you're always going to get the same result. In order to get better results, you have to leave the herd and do what is right for you. You have to learn new, better ways of conducting your financial affairs to avoid these pitfalls. The solutions to the problems of modern financial life are right at your fingertips, waiting for you to grab them. Now, you can store your hard-earned money where it belongs, in gold. Now you can transact your business instantly around the world. No matter where you live, OffshoreCashier.com brings you a whole new world of sound transaction processing and is your gateway to safe offshore storage of your assets in gold where they belong. Listen, stop playing the same stupid games that lose you money, get you spied on, and cost you a fortune for the privilege. OffshoreCashier.com is your gateway to a better way of handling your financial affairs, of getting your assets out of harm's way, into a safe haven, yet still accessible. And, best of all, you don't have to already be a millionaire to use OffshoreCashier.com. It's inexpensive, easy to use, and safely offshore. So do the smart thing. Break free of the herd and find the comfort, convenience, and safety the offshore world offers you. We're at your fingertips at OffshoreCashier.com. Outrageous taxes, out-of-control foreign adventures, armed black-suited thugs breaking down your door at 2 a.m., forced vaccinations, stealing your children away from you because some nosy social worker doesn't think you're giving your child proper medical care, or confiscating your apartment building because your tenant was smoking a joint, stealing your house because a greedy developer bribed corrupt local politicians. On and on it goes. It seems to be a never-ending story of woe caused by a government totally out of control. Don't you wish you could simply take it all back? Don't you wish you could tell these bureaucrats to bugger off and mind their own business? Don't you wish you could just stop worrying? Well, now you can. FlyNational.org is a website that tells you how to burn the bonds that bind you. FlyNational.org tells you how to take it all back and get the peace of mind from having absolute rights, just like you thought you had all along, but realize now you don't. Pay a visit to FlyNational.org and get off the slave plane and onto the freedom plane. That's FlyNational.org. And I think you told me about another incident with this guy where he was going to write a ticket and he got a telephone call?
Yes, they put him on a temporary detail where he was supposed to be writing parking tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a setup where you have to carry a cell phone. And it's just like FedEx now. Instead of writing out a paper ticket per se out of a bunch of tickets you're carrying in your pocket, you punch the information on the vehicle into this handheld wireless computer device.
I see.
And he was bored walking around looking for parking violations, and this wasn't his forte anyway, and he was bored out of his mind. So he, like I said, he's a young guy, so he puts in his own license plate number. And he puts in the location where he happens to be at the time, and he puts in his own license number, and he said it wasn't more than 45 seconds when his cell phone vibrated, and he took it off his belt and answered, and they said, the vehicle you just punched in is a sovereign vehicle, don't ticket it.
45 seconds.
Yep.
So that means somebody's watching this pretty closely.
Well, it means that the central where the information on these tickets come in, obviously it sounded an alarm or came up on an orange bar or something. I don't know, because I don't know how it works. But somebody was alerted, and they called him immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sovereign vehicle. And he was laughing. He's saying, now, not only am I a sovereign, but my car is too. I think this is neat. He was laughing.
Now, and of course we're going through these stories, folks, so that you understand that this process is real, that it has been verified, and that it does work. And I think you had access to some other information on some other people who went through this and got stopped by for traffic violations by the police. Would you like to relate one of those stories?
Oh, there have been several of those where people have been stopped and presented the affidavit, stopped at drunk stops and things like that, where it's just an open air type of thing, and it's not a cruiser pulling you over, but it's just a roadblock type of thing. And they present the physical affidavit, and the officers have, interestingly, if it's nighttime, they flash the flashlight on the affidavit, and then they turn it to the back page and they feel with their fingers to be sure that there is a crimp, a certification on it, and they hand it back and wave them through. They don't even ask for license or registration.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is proof, folks, that this does work. Now, of course, this only works against statutory law, not common law, correct? Something that is a real crime.
Yes. The only risk that a national sovereign takes in terms of law is if he commits a common law crime. If you create a victim, then you're in trouble, and rightly so.
Right.
Because all the courts are quasi-common law, even though they don't usually practice it. They can literally, effectively rule on common law.
Okay.
If you've committed a common law crime, if you go out and you assault someone, and they file a complaint against you, as a victim with injuries, well, you're in the same position that you would be anyway.
Right.
But if it is a statutory, maritime, admiralty, equity type law where there is no victim, well, let me put it this way. Not that I'd be interested in doing this, but this is about as extreme as I can put it. If you want to sit on the corner of 3rd and Main and smoke a marijuana cigarette and give the local police officer the bird as he drives by, you can do that, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay.
He has no jurisdiction. You have not created a victim.
Right, because that's a victimless crime. It'd be the same thing for gambling,
Correct.
and all these other so-called vices that they've
right. You could go down on the back alley somewhere and get yourself your own little craps game, and you're outside their jurisdiction. You haven't created a victim, unless perhaps you're keeping money that someone is going to complain that you've defrauded them out of and damaged them that way, and I guess then they could morph it into common law, but...
Right, but I mean, they sit down there and play, so I guess unless you're cheating, they couldn't do anything about it. So, was there anything else you wanted to add about your little group here before we move on to some other questions?
No, I can't think of anything unless you have some specific question.
No, those are the main ones that came to mind. Because this proves, folks, that the process works. How long do you think this police officer would last if this was a joke or if this didn't work? I mean, he wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. So this does work, folks. Now we're going to go over a few other questions in the time remaining, and some of this we've sort of covered in passing. But I just want to make sure that some of these issues are covered specifically before we break off the program today. So we've been talking about American national sovereigns for, about almost an hour and a half now. Is there some succinct definition you can give us?
Definition for American national sovereign?
Yeah, what exactly is an American national sovereign?
He is the same man or woman that he was the day he was born, with no contracts, presumed by law, contracts that he's bound by, other than the basics of right and wrong.
Okay. And that's another important word that you used just there. You said presumed. Because normally, in the statutory system that we live in, a person is presumed to be a statutory citizen unless proven otherwise. Is that not correct?
Yes. As soon as you opt into the system, then you are presumed to be obligated to the system, and you are presumed to be accepting benefits, which validates the contract.
And so your affidavit rebuts the presumption.
It also rebuts the fact that you are accepting benefits and thus obligating yourself.
Okay.
You accept only what you have to accept to exist, to make a living, to eat in the world of commerce. And beyond that, you're not accepting benefits, and those are what you do have to accept, you have no choice in, are not to be construed as benefits because you do it only under duress and coercion.
Oh, that brings up another point that I was going to follow up with here. So you said you can reserve your rights to use certain things. So in other words, you can. I know that some of these gurus, so-called in the past, has said, well, when you become a sovereign, you have to give up your bank account, you have to give up your this, that, and the other thing. You can't do this, you can't do that. Now, what you're saying, though, is that you can reserve the rights to use certain things that you have to use in order to function in this artificial world they've created, correct?
That's correct. There's a quotation from the Bible that says that you must live in this world, but you must not be part of it.
Okay.
That's a rough translation. But it's very, very applicable to what we're dealing with here.
So
obviously, you cannot live in a tree.
Right.
All right? Your feet don't fit around a limb. You have to live in adequate surroundings that will preserve life and so forth. You have to make a living. You have to eat. And they have created a world that you can't get out of.
Okay.
You have to exist. And there are certain things that they've created, conditions that they've created, that you are going to have to comply with, that you have no choice in the matter if you're going to eat.
Right.
So you either preserve or reserve, and the two words don't mean the same thing, but you make it a matter of record that you have reserved the use of the Social Security number without obligating yourself.
Okay.
Because you have no choice. Or that you may be forced, for the purpose of making a living and earning enough money to survive in commerce, you may be forced to get a license from some corporation to do something.
Okay.
But you are making it clear and putting it on the record and for the record that this would be done only under duress and coercion as a means of survival, and it is not done with any acknowledgement of obligation.
Okay. I think you mentioned to me before that you even reserve your right to use Federal Reserve notes. Is that not correct?
Yes, because there is an obligation that is presumed by the use of Federal Reserve notes. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. They are private. This is private money. It is not public money. And by the use of these private debt obligation notes, there is an obligation for the user that is presumed. So this presumption has to be destroyed.
Okay. And what is that presumption? That you're a U.S. citizen or what?
The presumption is that you're using somebody else's private property, and by the use thereof, that you are now obligated in unnamed and unspecified ways.
Well, one of those includes taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, in other words, those funny money Federal Reserve notes, FRNs, frauds, whatever you want to call them, actually have adhesion contracts behind them, too.
Yes, they do.
Because you're using the private monopoly money of the corporation.
It's their property.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get away free.
Mm-hmm. So maybe this is the way some of the other arguments have been defeated, but you're reserving the rights to use those because there's no other money around.
Well, if you reserve or preserve your right to function in the world of commerce, and they decide to come forward and challenge you, you will have noticed them, provably so, given them every opportunity under the Uniform Commercial Code to rebut and deny your facts, your statements, and they will have, by choice, neglected to do this. They had adequate notice repeatedly. You now have what's known as a judgment in commerce. You have gotten them into agreement with you.
Okay.
They've agreed that everything that you stated is fact and truth because they had adequate opportunity according to law to rebut and deny with documentation, and they made the choice not to do that. So they have agreed with you. You have them in agreement with you.
Okay. Yes, they've only got a certain time limit, and if they exceed that, then it's presumed, and they can't come back later and do anything. What is that called? It's called estoppel, right?
It's called estoppel. It's also called no recourse.
Okay. So they can't bring this up later once that time period has expired.
That's true, and if they do, they're in error.
Right. And in fact, folks, you should never get into court in the first place once you become an American national sovereign. They have no jurisdiction, and that should be settled out long before you would ever see a courtroom, correct?
Yes, you have settled it. It is a, well, for lack of a better term at the moment, a done deal.
Okay. So, and of course, now if you're in Mayberry RFD that doesn't have a computer system set up, and you are, for some reason, you don't have your affidavit with you, what would you do then?
Well, you might go to jail.
Mm-hmm. Until they find out who you are.
If there's a confrontation and you're foolish enough not to have your body armor with you, then you may go to jail. It'll be a temporary thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point in the very near future, probably the next day, you are going to be able to produce this, and it is a matter of record. It's on file.
Or it's going to
it's a matter of record around the country if it wants to be accessed. And you're not going to stay there. But my advice is, why go through all that aggravation?
Mm-hmm.
Carry your body armor with you.
Yes. Well, I mean, we've talked at length on certain subjects, and one of them is it seems like they keep the computer flashing, American national sovereign is certainly evidence of that. They obviously keep some kind of centralized list of who you are, and I remember another thing you told me. This wasn't somebody that you helped, but somebody that sort of did it on their own by accident, where they had the judge called at 2 o'clock in the morning to order that they be released from jail, if you remember that one.
Yes, there's a fellow in Las Vegas, Nevada, actually, an older man, and he was very much into the common law court and the patriot movement, and he was one of these odd fellows he was a bachelor, and he filed everything anybody ever gave him. He went and he made it a matter of public record. He signed it, he agreed with it, he filled it out, and he made sure it was on record. Well, he does not know exactly what it was that he filed. He can't tell you the specific document, but he does know that he was pulled in, and a friend of his notified the Secretary of State of the United States that there was a controversy, that he had been jailed on a traffic violation. There was controversy, which is a legal term again, and the court was notified of his status, and he was released. The issue was that the judge didn't understand, a female judge, and she didn't understand exactly what this was all about. She apparently wasn't in the know, or she wasn't told what the circumstances were. She was just told that they wanted this fellow, whose name was Harry, they wanted Harry out of their hair, and they didn't want it made a public issue. So therefore, you couldn't wait until 9 o'clock in the morning and do it in court. They pulled her out of bed, and they pulled him out of the jail cell. And she dismissed his case at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. And that's because they don't want witnesses or a matter of public record when they acknowledge this. They just want to pretend that they want to do it in secret so that nobody else catches on to it, I think, right?
Exactly. How is she going to explain to the prosecutor at 9 o'clock in the morning with a full courtroom and the gallery's full? How is she going to explain to the prosecutor that she just dismissed the case?
Right.
The prosecutor's going to be saying, "But, Your Honor, but, Your Honor." And she doesn't have any explanation. Just shut up and sit down.
Right. She just got a phone call.
All right, I just got a phone call. Well, that creates all kinds of contentious questions. What phone call?
So I suppose at the very least, if for some reason you didn't have your affidavit and your documentation with you for some reason, or it was stolen from you, and you were in some podunk little town out in the middle of nowhere, that at the very least, there'd be some phone call, and you would end up being released anyway.
Yes, the next in your little arraignment the next morning, you give the certified affidavit to the bailiff, and you have him take it up to his honor or her honor, and that should be the end of it.
Right.
No jurisdiction. And you don't say anything. You do not answer questions. My affidavit speaks for me.
Right. But of course, if you do everything right, folks, you should never see the inside of a courtroom anyway. Let me see. There's a few other little questions here. We have about 20 minutes remaining. One of these questions is, will you need to use a driver's license?
I would suggest using it. You have your reservation of use in place as a matter of record. I would suggest, and your signature and the reservations on the all capital letter name and so forth are already a matter of record. I would suggest keeping the driver's license and the registration unless you fancy going down and battling it out with the bureaucrats and wasting your time. To me, it's cheaper to pay the bucks and get their little documents as long as you're not obligating yourself by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If it keeps them happy, it keeps them off your case and keeps them from wasting your time, which is about what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me see. There's a couple other little questions here. We went over the income tax already, but Social Security tax, I guess you're exempt from as well, correct?
You could be, if you want to notice them and push the issue and do it with your employer. Long term, they're going to stop withholding. But do you want to do that? That again, is a decision. It's a personal decision that somebody can make. You do have a right to collect a Social Security check because it was a valid contract from your point of view. You were led to believe that this was an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
You've paid into it, and you're entitled to collect the benefit from it as long as you have your reservation in place saying that you're not obligating yourself by accepting the benefit. You paid into the system.
Okay, so in other words, if you're on Social Security, you don't necessarily have to give up your check just because you decide to regain your freedom.
No, we have national sovereigns that are collecting their Social Security, no problem.
Okay. Now, how about property taxes and sales taxes?
Again, how are you going to not pay a sales tax? You're going to go to the dollar store and buy $5 worth of items and argue about the sales tax on the soap?
Well, you'd be surprised what some people will do. I mean, but theoretically, you wouldn't have to pay it, but it would be a real hassle to deal with it.
Would it be worth it?
Right.
We're talking, 63 cents. Is it really worth your time to argue about this? You've got to know when to hold them and when to fold them on this and use some common sense.
Because you're dealing with.
And as far as property taxes go, there is going to be, because in some cases property taxes can be a very, very big issue, depending on how much property is quote unquote owned by anyone going into this. And the work hasn't been completed on it. The dots haven't all been connected with regard to allodial title and the absence of property tax. That's a convoluted mess all on its own. It's a real rat's nest, and there's no perfection on it. For the time being, until some answers surface on this one, you just pay your property taxes. But this is something that's being worked on.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me make an observation here, folks. Our conductor on the Freedom Train here, and actually we were going to get into an explanation of that, but we hadn't gotten into it. But anyway, our conductor here, freely admits that there are certain aspects of this process, such as the allodial title that she was referring to, that are still in process. And, as time goes on, more of these discoveries are going to be made, but this is really meticulous, time-consuming, painstaking work. And one good thing about our conductor here is she doesn't pretend to be a Ms. Know-It-All. So I don't know if you want to comment on those statements or not, but it's certainly a breath of fresh air compared to some other people who don't know it all and pretend they do.
The only comment I have to make on that, made more to convince people who are listening that I'm really not a humorless creature I must seem to be. I do have a sense of humor hidden away there somewhere. My father told me when I was about, my father was a farmer, and we lived on a very basic farm, and my father was a hard worker, and I remember him telling me when I must have been about 11 years old that I was so lazy that he was going to buy a cat to carry under my arm to breathe for me.
Oh, dear.
That was one of the things that he told me. I think I must have been a thorn in his side. But I got sidetracked. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I got to thinking about my father and grinning and forgot where I was. What were you saying?
Oh.
One of the central themes of almost every religion is the concept of judgment to an ever-burning hellfire.
Guilty, banished to hell.
We've all heard versions of hell which portray the devil and his cohorts fiendishly tormenting the wicked. Oh, come on now. Where did these ideas begin? How could a loving God sentence man to eternal torment of any kind? Is there a real hellfire? What does your Bible really say about hell? These questions are answered in the booklet, Is There a Real Hellfire? Your copy is free of charge. Send for it now. Is there a real hellfire?
You may find further information on these subjects at the Restoration website library at rcg.destiny-worldwide.net. That's rcg.destiny-worldwide.net. And look in our extensive library section to find this and other literature. Outrageous taxes, out-of-control foreign adventures, armed black-suited thugs breaking down your door at 2 a.m., forced vaccinations, stealing your children away from you because some nosy social worker doesn't think you're giving your child proper medical care, or confiscating your apartment building because your tenant was smoking a joint, stealing your house because a greedy developer bribed corrupt local politicians. On and on it goes. It seems to be a never-ending story of woe caused by a government totally out of control. Don't you wish you could simply take it all back? Don't you wish you could tell these bureaucrats to bugger off and mind their own business? Don't you wish you could just stop worrying? Well, now you can. FlyNational.org is a website that tells you how to burn the bonds that bind you. FlyNational.org tells you how to take it all back and get the peace of mind from having absolute rights, just like you thought you had all along, but realize now you don't. Pay a visit to FlyNational.org and get off the slave plane and onto the freedom plane. That's FlyNational.org. You have heard the Ambassador for World Peace program with M. John Allen, sponsored by the Ambassador International Cultural Foundation. For all literature and other resources advertised on this program, please go to our website at ambassadorfoundation.org. That's ambassadorfoundation.org. Please join us next time for the Ambassador for World Peace program.